Thank you for listening to Heart Chat Stories. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so don't forget to leave a comment and share these stories with someone who might need them. Each story is meant to help you pause, reflect, and think about your own relationships, how you love, how you heal, and how you grow. If you'd like more insight into the stories or want to add one to your next book club, visit graceguidance.com. You can find the full collection there, along with reflection prompts to keep the conversations going. And remember, every story in Heart Chat Stories is a chance to rediscover yourself, one honest chat at a time.
The sound of drilling and clinking tools echoed from beneath the house as Honesty spread a simple blanket across the patch of sunlit grass in the backyard. She carried 2 plates, sandwiches and fruit. Nothing fancy, just nourishment. Orin crawled out from the crawlspace, wiping dust from his arms. His shirt clung to him from the heat, and his hair was slightly mussed, not that he seemed to care. When he spotted her setting up lunch, he raised a brow. "I don't usually eat on the job," he said, almost defensive. "Well," she answered without looking up, "that explains a lot." "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, half grinning, half challenging. "That you're a man who probably thinks he doesn't have needs," she said lightly. "Or that working is the same thing as living. Or maybe you believe you're tougher than food?" He stared at her for 2 beats, then cracked a reluctant smile. "You always this pushy?" "Only with people who forget they're human," she replied, patting the blanket. "Sit." Orin hesitated, not because he didn't want to, but because wanting to was the problem. Still, he sat, long legs folding awkwardly, making the blanket suddenly feel small. Honesty handed him a sandwich. Their fingers brushed. He felt it. She felt it. Neither commented. They ate in the warm quiet of the yard for a moment until she asked, "What's your goal with your business?" He blinked as if he wasn't used to anyone caring about his future. "Grow it," he said finally. "Take on bigger contracts, maybe hire a team. Not just be the guy who patches what's falling apart, but build something from the ground up." "That sounds like a solid plan," she encouraged. He shrugged, plucking at a blade of grass. "Plans are easy. Believing in them is harder." Her attention sharpened. "What's holding you back? Money? Time?" He shook his head. The truth was messier. "Trust," he said quietly. "In myself." Honesty waited, not pushing, just making room for him to continue if he chose to. "I was in a relationship," he said. "Thought I knew the person. Thought I knew myself. Then everything I believed turned out to be wrong." His jaw tightened. "It made me question my judgment, in people and in my own decisions." Honesty's voice softened. "That sounds painful." "Yeah," he let out a dry laugh. "But I'm not here for sympathy. Just trying to figure out who I am outside of what happened." She nodded, thoughtful. "Maybe that's what building is," she said. "Starting with what you have and reinforcing what keeps you standing." Orin looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, he allowed someone's words to land. "I don't know how you do that," he murmured. "Do what?" "Say things that hit the exact place I'm trying to avoid." Honesty smiled faintly. "Occupational hazard of someone who sells hope for a living." He huffed a laugh, the sound surprising them both. She caught him watching her just a beat too long. He caught himself wanting that moment to stretch. Then, mercifully, a timer dinged from his phone. "That's my break," he said, standing quickly. "Thanks for lunch." She rose too. "Any time." He turned to walk back to his tools, but paused, looking over his shoulder. "It was good," he said. "The food, the company." Honesty's chest warmed. "Mine too." Orin ducked under the barrier tape and disappeared beneath the house again. But the foundation wasn't the only thing shifting. Something inside him was too. Slow, cautious, undeniable. 2 days later, the foundation crew arrived to start the heavy work. Their equipment rumbled through the yard, and Orin supervised with arms crossed, the picture of calm competence. Honesty stepped outside holding 2 cups of coffee, steam curling through the crisp air. "They said it'll be a few hours," she said, handing him a cup. "Thought you might need this. Working men need fuel, remember?" Orin accepted the coffee, fingers brushing hers briefly. "You're going to hold that over my head forever, aren't you?" "Absolutely," she smiled. He took a slow sip, surprised by how perfect it tasted. "So," she asked, leaning against the railing, "when you're not bossing construction crews or saving hopeless houses, what do you do for fun?" Orin stared at her a moment, caught off guard by the question. Fun wasn't a language he'd spoken in a long time, but something bold sparked under his ribs. "Come on," he said, grabbing his keys. "I'll show you." Her eyebrows lifted. "Right now?" "You said we've got time. Let's use it." He motioned toward his truck, heart thudding. Honesty hesitated for a beat, then smiled, a little too brightly. "Okay, lead the way." 30 minutes later, Coastal Q and Arcade. Honesty expected a bar. She got neon lights, chalk-smelling cue sticks, and air hockey tables clacking like childhood memories. "You play?" she teased, eyeing the pool tables. "I live," he corrected, amusement flashing in his eyes. He racked the balls, chalked the cue, and took the first shot. Smooth, precise. A solid cracked into a pocket with a satisfying thud. Honesty whistled. "Show off." "You asked what I do for fun," he replied. "This is it." She tried to take her first shot, but misjudged her angle, sending the cue ball in the opposite direction. Orin stepped behind her, close enough that she felt his breath on her neck. "Here," he murmured, guiding her hands gently to adjust her aim. "Relax your shoulders." Her pulse spiked. She swallowed. "Hard to relax with a giant looming behind me." "I'm not looming," he said, leaning just slightly closer. "I'm assisting." She took the shot, and 2 balls rolled into pockets at once. She spun around, triumphant. "Who's the legend now?" "You're still borrowing my skills," he smirked. "Doesn't count." Next, they hit the air hockey table, competition replacing shyness. Honesty was shockingly good. She laughed every time she scored on him, and Orin found that laugh utterly disarming. She looked free. He felt younger. At one point, she leaned over the table, hair falling forward, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Worried I'm going to kick your butt?" she asked. "Terrified," he deadpanned. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the past, or the rules he'd built, or the distance he needed to maintain. He was just here, with her. The sun dipped low by the time the foundation crew packed up for the day. Orin stayed behind to double-check measurements and note what they'd tackled. Honesty sat on the porch steps, legs stretched out, sipping the last of her coffee, watching him like she was memorizing his shape in the fading light. When he finally walked over, she smiled and slid over, giving him space to sit. "Productive day?" she asked. "Very," he said, settling beside her. "Your house is going to be a tank once we're done with it." "That's the goal," she said quietly. There was a long stretch of silence, comfortable but charged. The kind of quiet that invited honesty. Orin clasped his hands together, looking out at the street. He didn't plan to speak, but he did. "You asked earlier what I was holding back from," he said. "Truth is, I stopped trusting myself a while ago." Honesty listened, not with pity, but with interest. It made it easier to continue. "There was someone," he said, choosing each word like it might cut him open. I thought I was a father for years. I read bedtime stories, learned how to cook for her, taught her how to use a bike. His voice cracked, subtle but unmissable. Found out she wasn't mine, and suddenly I was nothing to both of them. Honesty inhaled, sharp and pained for him. I'm so sorry, Orin. Yeah, he muttered. Me too. The quiet returned, deeper this time. She shifted, turning slightly toward him. You didn't lose nothing, you know. He glanced at her, confused. You learned how to be a dad, she said softly. How to love in a way some men never will. That doesn't disappear just because someone else couldn't handle the truth. For a moment, Orin couldn't breathe. Not because her words hurt, but because they healed. He studied her, curious, cautious. How do you always know exactly what to say? Honesty laughed once, a soft breath. I don't. I'm just not afraid of the truth. His lips twitched. I used to not be either. Maybe you're finding your way back, she offered gently. He let his gaze linger on her profile, the way the porch light caught her cheek, the strength in her eyes, the warmth she tried so hard to hide. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted quietly. She turned toward him, and the space between them felt suddenly too small, too electric. Maybe that's okay, she whispered. You showed up. Sometimes that's enough. Their eyes locked, a silent admission passing between them. Something is happening here, something neither planned, something neither wants to ruin. Before the moment could go too far, her phone buzzed inside. She stood, breaking the tension like glass. I should check that. He nodded once, pulling his guard back up. Yeah. But before she went in, she paused. You're not nothing, Orin Wilde, and disappeared into the house. Orin stared after her, jaw tight, because vulnerability wasn't his enemy anymore. It was his craving. Orin lingered near the porch after the crew left, telling himself he was just finishing his notes. But the truth tugged him toward the house, toward her. He stepped inside and found Honesty in the kitchen, papers spread out like a battlefield. She pinched the bridge of her nose, stress tightening her shoulders. He cleared his throat softly. You look like you're trying to solve the whole world in one evening. She startled, then forced a quick smile. Feels like it. Just life stuff, deadlines, expectations, trying to keep everything from tipping over. He nodded, understanding more than she realized. He leaned against the counter, hands tucked in his pockets, vulnerable but grounded. I've been thinking, he said, eyes locked on hers. Would you want to go out sometime? Her breath caught, surprise melting into something softer. Go out? She echoed, almost testing the words. Yeah, he gave a small shrug. Coffee, pool, whatever gets us away from all this noise for a little while. Her lips curved, hesitant but hopeful. I like that idea, she admitted. I really do. Then, honesty, her specialty. But things are a lot for me right now. My plate's overflowing. Orin nodded, stepping a little closer, voice warm. Well, he said, I happen to know someone who could use a break from the noise too. She laughed under her breath, like tension cracking open just enough to let in some light. You're probably right, she said. He straightened, a slow smile forming. Then let me take you out. Just one night. No heavy expectations. We unwind, have some fun. Her eyes softened, gratitude flickering there. Okay, she whispered. I'd like that. Good. He pushed off the counter, heading toward the door before he said more than he should. I'll text you when I'm off tomorrow. She followed him to the entryway. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. Good night, Honesty. There was something reverent in the way he said her name. Good night, Orin, she replied, and the way she said his told him he wasn't alone in this shift. When the door closed behind him, Orin didn't have to pretend. There was a real smile on his face, one that made him feel alive, one that made him feel like he was allowed to hope again. Honesty had just finished getting ready for her not-a-date date. Jeans, soft top, casual but cute, when her phone buzzed. It was Orin. Hey, I think you should come outside. Something isn't right. Her pulse kicked up instantly. She hurried out, finding him kneeling near the foundation, flashlight slicing through shadows. A nasty crack webbed outward like it was trying to escape the house entirely. What does that mean? She asked, voice small. It means this shift is happening faster than expected, he said. We need to brace it now, or it could spread into the interior walls. Date gone, priorities shifting, reality crashing in. Without hesitation, Honesty crouched beside him, steadying a beam as he secured the first support. They worked like a team who'd done this before. Her flashlight, his tools, quick instructions exchanged with urgency and trust already growing between them. Hours passed. Sweat, dirt, focus. No space for fear, just action. Finally, Orin tightened the last bolt and stepped back. It'll hold, he exhaled. We stopped it in time. Honesty let out a shaky breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. You're a lifesaver. He glanced up, and suddenly awareness hit like heat between them. Dust streaked across his cheek, shirt clinging to broad shoulders, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. She didn't plan it. She just went to him. Her hands slid to his chest. His breath stalled, and his mouth met hers like he'd been waiting longer than he'd admit. It wasn't gentle or unsure. It was relief and fear and want tangled into one accidental confession. When they finally parted, foreheads brushing, she whispered, I need to call my mom. I won't make it to pick up Chase from school, and he gets nervous if someone isn't there right away. Orin blinked. Chase? He repeated. My son, she smiled. Brief, natural, unaware the earth just shifted beneath his feet more violently than the house had. She can get him from preschool and bring him here. The spark between them flickered, then nearly blew out completely. Oh, his voice wasn't steady anymore. You have a son. Orin looked away sharply, as if she'd shined a light directly into a wound he'd buried deep. I didn't know, he said. I have other stops to make today. He grabbed his tools too quickly. Orin, she said, trying to catch his eyes. What's wrong? Nothing. His voice was too raw to be believable. Just need to go. And he was already backing away. Good job today, he muttered. Stay off that side of the house. Then he left her in the silence of a yard they'd just saved together. Honesty stepped inside and pressed her hand against the cool wall. The house wasn't the only thing with cracks. The solarium glowed with soft evening light, palms casting long shadows across the circular seating arrangement. Orin took his usual seat, back row, second from the left, close enough to listen, but far enough to exit if vulnerability got too close. Tonight, the topic was boundaries, the kind you set to protect yourself, and the kind that eventually cage you in. One by one, the men shared. A marriage tension, a job loss, a father afraid of failing his kids. Then the circle turned to Orin. He could have said pass. He usually did. But his chest felt tight, like silence was becoming its own kind of lie. He took a breath. There's this job, he started, fingers locked together. A home foundation. Older cottage, needs reinforcement. A harmless enough beginning. No one blinked. But the homeowner, he paused, forcing the words out carefully. She's a mom. That got attention. Soft, understanding looks, not judgmental ones. I got burned, he continued, the memory gripping tight. A woman lied about her kid being mine. I was in that girl's life for years. Then I found out I wasn't anything to her, not on paper, not in the truth. A couple men nodded knowingly. Betrayal was its own language here. So I made a rule. No more women with kids. Ever. He let out a breath that felt years overdue. But this woman, Honesty, she's different. Saying her name out loud rattled him. She's steady. She listens. She makes me laugh. And I don't laugh anymore. His voice dropped. And that scares the hell out of me. The group leader, Marcus, leaned forward. What's the fear, Orin? That she'll lie? He shook his head. No, I'm scared she's telling the truth. A ripple of emotion passed through the room. Men who'd all learned the same lesson. Truth is more terrifying when you start to want it again. And you like her kid? Marcus asked gently. I haven't met him yet, Orin admitted. But even knowing he exists has me halfway out the door. Why? Another man asked. Orin stared at the floor, jaw clenching. Because I don't know if I can love a child again and lose them twice. Silence. Not awkward. Sacred. Marcus nodded slowly. Sounds like your rule isn't protecting you. It's punishing you.
Thank you for listening to Heart Chat Stories. Every story is written with love, to heal, to inspire, and to remind you that new beginnings are always possible. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so others can find healing through story. Until next time, keep your heart open and your spirit lifted.